I opened my parents' front door and heard my 6-year-old daughter crying in the living room. Then my mother screamed the one sentence I never thought I'd hear her say: maybe if your father hadn't abandoned you, you wouldn't be such a useless child. For a second, I thought I misheard, but then my father's voice followed, cold and sharp. You need to learn the truth sometime. Your dad ruined this family and my daughter. My little Emma sobbed harder. That was the moment something inside me snapped, because the dad they were talking about was me. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 34 years old, a single father. And until that afternoon, I believed, maybe foolishly, that family was still something sacred. Emma is my whole world. Her mom left when she was 2. Just packed a bag one morning and disappeared to another state with a guy she met online. No calls, no birthdays, nothing. So it's always been the two of us. I work as an electrical contractor. Long hours, sometimes dirty work, but it pays the bills and keeps a roof over our heads. And every Friday night, Emma and I make pancakes for dinner and watch cartoons. It's our tradition. The problem is, my parents never approved of the way I lived my life. They always thought I should have been more like my younger brother, Mark. Mark was the golden child. College degree. Corporate job, perfect hair, perfect suits, perfect life. Meanwhile, I was the disappointment. The guy who worked with tools instead of spreadsheets. The guy whose wife ran away growing up. My parents made it very clear which son they were proud of and which one they tolerated. Still, I kept them in our lives for Emma's sake, because no matter what happened between adults, I believed grandparents should love their grandchild. Apparently, I was wrong. That afternoon, I came by their house to pick Emma up after work. They had offered to babysit while I finished a job across town. When I stepped into the hallway, the voices were coming from the living room. My mother sounded furious. You spilled juice again, she snapped. I'm sorry, Emma whispered through tears. My father sighed dramatically. This is exactly what happens when a child grows up without proper discipline. Then came the words that made my hands clench into fists. Your father doesn't know how to raise you, Emma sniffled. My daddy's nice. My mother laughed, not a warm laugh, a cruel one. Sweetheart, your daddy is the reason this family fell apart. I stepped into the room right then. What the hell is going on? All three of them froze. Emma's little face lit up the second she saw me. Daddy. She ran straight into my arms. Her cheeks were wet with tears. My mother crossed her arms. Oh, you're early. I looked down at Emma. Sweetheart, what happened? She wiped her nose. I spilled juice. And Grandma said I'm messy because you don't teach me things. My stomach tightened. I turned slowly toward my parents. You're yelling at a 6-year-old over juice. My father scoffed. It's not about juice, Daniel. Oh, really? My mother stepped forward. That child needs structure. She has structure. I said, she needs a proper family. She snapped back. The room went quiet. Emma squeezed my shirt tighter, and then my father said something that made my blood run cold. We've been discussing something important. I stared at him. What kind of discussion involves making my daughter cry? He glanced at my mother. Then back at me. Double quotes custody. Double quotes. The word hit me like a brick. What? My mother spoke calmly, almost smugly. We think Emma would be better off living here. Before I continue, hit the like button and subscribe if you believe families should never treat a child like this. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. At first, I actually laughed because the idea sounded ridiculous. You're joking. My father shook his head. No, my mother continued like she was explaining a grocery list. You work long hours. You're unstable financially. And Emma clearly needs stronger guidance. I stared at them. You think you're taking my daughter? We're considering it, my father said. Emma tugged my sleeve. Daddy, am I in trouble? I knelt down and held her face gently. No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. Then I stood back up and looked at my parents differently. For the first time in my life, I realized they weren't just critical, they were dangerous. Did you actually tell my daughter I ruined this family? I asked quietly. My mother shrugged. Well, it's not exactly a secret. Emma started crying again. That's when I said the only thing that mattered, we're leaving. But my father blocked the doorway. You can't just walk away from a conversation like this. I absolutely can. You need to think about Emma's future. He insisted. My mother's voice turned sharp. If you loved her, you'd consider what's best. That sentence made something click in my brain because suddenly their behavior made sense. This wasn't a conversation. It was a plan. That night after Emma fell asleep, I started digging. At first I thought maybe I was overreacting, but something felt off. So I called a lawyer, a friend from high school named Rachel. She listened quietly as I explained everything. Then she asked one question. Daniel, have your parents contacted Child Protective Services? My stomach dropped. I don't know. You might want to check. The next morning I did. And that's when the truth came out. 3 weeks earlier, someone had filed an anonymous complaint claiming Emma was living in an unstable environment, claiming I worked too much, claiming she lacked proper supervision. Rachel called me back later that day. Daniel, this report was detailed. How detailed? School schedules, work hours, even your income. My hands tightened around the phone. Only 3 people knew all those details. Emma single quotes S teacher and my parents. Rachel sighed. I can't prove it yet, but it looks like they're building a case. A case for what? She paused. To take custody. That night I barely slept. Not because I was scared, because I was furious. My parents hadn't just yelled at my daughter. They were trying to take her from me. Behind my back. And suddenly, a lot of things started making sense, like why they had suddenly offered to babysit more often, why my mother kept asking about my work schedule. Why my father asked weird questions about my savings. They weren't being helpful. They were gathering evidence. So I did something my parents never expected. I started preparing. The first thing Rachel told me was simple. Document everything. So I did. I saved every message, recorded every phone call, even installed cameras at my house. Then something interesting happened. 2 days later, my mother called. Daniel, we need to talk. About what? Emma put it in a text. Double quote silence. Then she said something strange. Well, if something were to happen to you, she would live here anyway. That sentence sent chills down my spine. Rachel heard the recording later. Her response, good, let them keep talking. The second twist came a week later. Rachel called again, and this time her voice sounded serious. Daniel, you need to hear this. What? I checked property records, and you're still listed as a beneficiary on your parents' estate. So? They recently updated their will. My stomach twisted. How does that affect Emma? Rachel hesitated, because if you were declared an unfit parent, yeah, your parents would gain custody, and they'd control the inheritance meant for Emma. Everything suddenly clicked. They weren't trying to save my daughter. They were trying to control the money that would eventually belong to her. My own parents. Planning this behind my back. That's when I decided something. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to end this. 2 weeks later, my father called. Come over. We need to settle this. His tone sounded confident, like he believed he had already won. So I agreed, and I brought Rachel with me when we walked into the house. My parents were sitting at the dining table, along with a man in a suit, their lawyer. My mother smiled smugly. Daniel, thank you for coming. My father folded his hands. We've decided to move forward with custody proceedings. Rachel calmly placed a folder on the table. Before that happens, you might want to see this. My parents frowned. Rachel slid several printed pages across the table. Recorded calls. Text messages. Screenshots. My mother's voice saying Emma needed to be taken from me. My father discussing legal strategies. The anonymous CPS complaint traced back to their home IP address. The Room went silent. My father's face turned pale. What is this? Rachel smiled slightly. Evidence. My mother tried to recover. You recorded us. Yes, Rachel said calmly. And if this custody case moves forward, we'll present everything in court. My father's hands started shaking. You can't threaten us. We're not threatening you. Rachel replied, we're protecting Daniel's daughter. Then she leaned forward. And if you attempt to interfere with his custody again, we'll file harassment and fraud charges. My mother's mouth opened, but no words came out. I stood up slowly. Emma was waiting in the car outside. I looked at my parents for the first time in my life. They looked small. You tried to take my daughter, I said quietly. My father muttered something, but I wasn't listening anymore. From today forward, I continued. You don't see her again, my mother gasped. You can't keep our granddaughter from us. I looked her straight in the eyes. You already did that yourselves. Then I walked out. That day I realized something important. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by loyalty. My parents chose control over love, manipulation over trust, and when they tried to break my daughter to win a legal battle, they lost us forever. Emma and I still make pancakes every Friday night. Only now, our house is a lot quieter and a lot happier.